I've written an op-ed that's going to be appearing this week in newspapers in my very red rural Virginia region, where I was a candidate for Congress as a Democratic nominee back in 2012. It has a lot of the same ideas as a video I made a couple days ago, but this one is geared slightly differently because it's geared to the Republican world in particular. Because I've had a couple days to see what the Republican world has been doing with this assassination attempt on Donald Trump. So I'm going to share with you what I've crafted that will be appearing in the newspapers around here. The title is "It's Unwise to Make So Much of an Assassination Attempt." History suggests that assassinations are among those kinds of human actions that can spread through contagion. The assassination of President Kennedy in 1963 led into a decade of consequential assassinations, like Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy in 1968, and George Wallace in 1972. The more attention is paid to any one incident, the more likely it will become contagious, as the idea germinates in the minds of susceptible people that they too can take such action and get such attention. For that reason, a wise society will not give any such incident any more importance than it warrants. Certainly, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump is a story people should know about. But how important is it? The importance of a news development should be assessed according to these two criteria. Does it tell us something important we don't already know? And the second criterion, does it change our situation in any important way? Clearly, that attempt on Trump's life would have been hugely important if it had been successful. Donald Trump is a leadership figure of possibly unprecedented importance on the American political scene. His command of a significant following with an intensity of loyalty is unlike anything ever witnessed in American history. His impact on American civilization, already and with potentially much more in the future, has been transformative in ways never matched by any previous American leader. If the assassin's bullet had eliminated Donald Trump, the entire political battle would have been thrown into uncertainty. The Republicans would have had to come up with a new standard bearer overnight, and the Democrats would have had to overhaul in major ways, their purpose and message in the presidential campaign. America's allies across the world would let go of a great deal of tension regarding their own future security. Huge. Hard to remember a more important story than that would have been. But the present incident is only an attempted assassination. How important is that? Number one, does it tell us anything we don't know? It tells us that among our 1/3 billion population, we've got some individuals who, for reasons of their own, go off the deep end and inflict violent destruction upon the American order. We knew that. It tells us that a lot of people have access to guns, and AR-15s in particular, that it would be better for us all for them not to have. We knew that too. It suggests that this is a time of great political tension in the country, and that political violence has become more of a threat than it has been. That's no news either, as all the discussion of gag orders against Trump's own incitements clearly showed. Since people intending to assassinate an American president show up regularly, though few get all the way to having such a shot at him. This attempt doesn't change our understanding that it's important to have an effective Secret Service to keep assassination from governing the American political path. And it reminds us that political violence is antithetical to the fundamental American value of the rule of law, and as we knew, must therefore be rejected. So, the world looks the same. Does it change our situation? No, not unless we magnify it. After Trump survived that assault with only a superficial wound, the whole contest, of which he is such a vital part, was exactly what it had been the day before. As human beings, we extend our sympathy to another human being who has been wounded and perhaps traumatized by such an incident. But we shouldn't make it unnecessarily a big deal, and thereby maybe inspire some copycat who pictures himself a figure in history like John Wilkes Booth or Lee Harvey Oswald. I fault the media for one thing. The job of the media should be to tell the people what they most need to know about the world so they can exercise good judgment as citizens. That would mean telling people a lot more about the meaning of such incidents as an unprecedented hurricane arising so early that tells us a whole lot about the gathering threat of climate change and about the significance of a Supreme Court decision that somehow held that our Constitution requires that the most powerful person in the country get nearly a free pass to violate the law. But instead, and this is especially true of the cable news industry, the media stops everything to give wall-to-wall coverage of the story of an attack that injured the ear of a presidential candidate. As it does to every major event, this is cable news anyway, that supplies them with dramatic videos, tornadoes, school shootings, terrorist bombings, stories that will get them eyeballs and therefore dollars. I also fault the Republican politicians who have seized upon this should be relatively inconsequential story for combative political purposes. Like a Republican congressman who calls upon the Pennsylvania prosecutor to charge President Biden for inciting this assassination attempt, followed by Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, also blaming Biden. Regular Republicans should ask themselves, would anything be different if it had been Biden whose ear was grazed? Different in any way that would justify a citizen giving different political weight to the one scenario rather than that he wouldn't give it to the other. And they should recognize that the answer is no. I'd say, let us give thanks that this was not a very important event and focus our attention on the nature of the task we face as the people of a troubled country. So, don't know how that'll be received out here, but I thought the point's worth making. Hope you found them interesting too. This is Andy Schmuckler. I usually work at a bigger picture thing than this, but the whole idea of contagion is really one that's worth considering as an important part of how we understand the forces at work in the human world, because we are creatures who are subject to contagion. I remember back in 1967, I think maybe it was a Psychoanalytic Quarterly or some quarterly scholarly journal, there was a piece, I think by an anthropologist named Weston LaBarre, about contagion. And he put forward the idea, which I found interesting, that everything that we, who are primates, do that expose our teeth to other people tends to be contagious. And he talked about yawning, which we can see, for example, in baboons, how contagious that is in baboons. But even my mention of the word yawning may give you a feeling like you feel like yawning. And laughing is another thing which is contagious. And then there's baring the teeth in hostility, which is probably in a way not altogether unrelated to an assassination attempt. So certain kinds of things are contagious, and they're worth looking into if you want to understand the human world. Thanks for attention. I'll be here next time I have something to say. And if you'll like and subscribe and support and follow, and go to my website, abetterhumanstory.org, to see how I've laid out a pretty big, elaborate, integrated picture of the forces at work in the human world. A picture that I think can be really useful in meeting our present challenges, which is to help American democracy to survive in the short term, and to help human civilization to survive on this planet for the long haul, rather than destroying ourselves. So, abetterhumanstory.org contains a variety of ways of seeing that picture, which I think can be of real use. Thank you, and bye-bye.